having lived my entire life in South Rutherford County, I've always looked at the Lake Lure area as the garden spot of western North Carolina, and I suppose that with the citizens doing the flowering bridge, that just added more truth to that thought. And so I'm excited about the opportunity that I've been given to speak a little about the history of the Lake Lure area on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of the Mountains Branch Library. The story of Lake Lure really begins in 1902. Dr. Lucius Morse paid a member of the Freeman family 25 cents for the privilege to ride a mule up the mountain and climb the wooden steps up to the top of Chimney Rock. And from the top of Chimney Rock, he was able to see most of the Hickory Nut Gorge and the Whiteside Valley, and he was struck with awe at what he saw. And so when he came down from the mountain, he realized that there was a great potential for this area and what this area could become. So he offered the Freeman family a certain price for 64 acres, including Chimney Rock, and he bought that 64-acre tract. Over the next few years, he and two brothers added several other tracts around the original one to their holdings. 20 years after that initial purchase, Dr. Morse began to put into action his plan for a gigantic summer resort. He put forth his ideas to a group of regional business leaders, and a meeting was held in November of 1923. Chimney Rock Mountains Incorporated received articles of incorporation from the state of North Carolina and was capitalized at $4 million with Dr. Morse as president. This was the largest corporation ever chartered in North Carolina up to that time. With the help of these businessmen whose names meant a great deal in the business world, options were taken on 8,000 acres of property. This acreage then was purchased near the end of 1923. And between 1923 and 1926, Dr. Morse took options on 65 tracts of land, which would become the basis for a recreational and power generating lake in the location of present-day Lake Lure. These tracts ranged in size from 1 3/4 acres all the way up to 527 acres. And because these properties lie along the river and had been damaged greatly by the 1916 flood, the owners of the farms and other tracts were not reluctant at all to sell for the fair prices that were offered. The Chimney Rock Mountains Corporation sold over $500,000 in bonds in February of 1925 to finance the building of the dam and the powerhouse on Tumbling Shoals of Broad River. The contract was let in March, and construction began almost immediately on what would become Lake Lure. Highway 20, which was still an unpaved road running through the valley, needed to be moved to a new location around the proposed lake. 5½ miles of concrete highway with 3 bridges was built on a new location, which is very close to what is now Highway 74A. When construction on the dam was complete, the gates were closed on September the 20th, 1926, and water began to fill what is now beautiful Lake Lure. The municipal building and arcade was completed and dedicated with great fanfare on June the 15th, 1926. Almost 4,000 people attended the celebration, which was keynoted by General A.J. Brawley of Fort Bragg. The United States Army Brass Band provided music throughout the day, and General Brawley laid the cornerstone with a Tiffany silver trowel. The Lake Lure Inn, a 56-room hotel, was opened very shortly thereafter. Several major organizations began to hold conventions in Lake Lure almost immediately. The North Carolina Association of County Commissioners held their annual convention at the resort in August of 1926. The state legislature granted a charter to the town during their 1927 session. The charter gave the town authority to regulate activities on the lake. 2 commissioners and the first mayor were sworn in on April the 8th, 1927, and they accepted the town charter. Dr. Morse was elected mayor, but he resigned during that same meeting due to business conflicts and the pressure of his activities. L.C. Cobb was then elected mayor. The last link of Highway 20 was completed from Rutherford to Lake Lure and opened to the public on July the 12th, 1927. This placed the resort area on the only paved route in the state, connecting the coast to the mountains. The new highway passed through Charlotte and stretched from Asheville to Wilmington. The Luremont section was the first development opened for the sale of lots, and over 100 lots were sold that first year. It appeared that the town of Lake Lure was well on its way to material growth and great success. By late in 1927, the development company had defaulted on some payments. There was very little promotion or publicity between then and early 1929. Dr. Morse's 2 brothers even began to have doubts about their interest in the properties, and they sold the land to Dr. Morse. Some of the property was sold at foreclosure in February of 1929, but was bought back for less than half the note amount by the Chimney Rock Company. Dr. Morse was quoted in the local newspaper in April of 1929 as saying that the Chimney Rock section this year is experiencing the best spring in its history. And the headlines for that article said there's a great season for the Lake Lure section. However, land values began to deflate, and only a few lots were sold that year to some Florida investors. In October, the stock market crashed, and the Great Depression had begun. Lee Powers, who owned Lureland Realty, bought many of the lots during the Rutherford County tax auctions in 1930 and 31. And over the next 2 years, Central Bank and Trust, the grantor for the defaulted lots, would grant many more of those lots to Lureland Realty, while Powers was left holding a great deal of land which could not be sold throughout the 1930s. That land did eventually increase in value, but Mr. Powers wisely held on to much of it. His daughter, Martha Jane, allowed for the property to be sold at her death, which provided several $1 million as a scholarship fund for students at Isothermal Community College. Stroud and Company of New York held the mortgage on the dam, the lake, and the hydroelectric plant. When the development failed, they foreclosed and organized the Carolina Mountain Power Company, which operated the power facility until all of the lake and power assets were purchased by the town in 1965. The town continues to contract with Duke Energy for the sale of electricity. Over the years, many rental properties have been added to the landscape of the town. The Bald Mountain Resort and the Fairfield Mountains Resort have drawn a great deal of tourism to the area. Part-time residents outnumber the full-time residents greatly, especially during the summer months. The permanent residents of the town number approximately 1,200 people. The natural beauty of the area has attracted several major movie productions, including Thunder Road in 1958, A Breed Apart and Firestarter in 1984, Dirty Dancing in 1987, and The Last of the Mohicans in 1992. During the time of the construction, Clyde A. Irwin became the superintendent of Rutherford County Schools in 1925. He realized that the Chimney Rock School, which was in the Whiteside Valley and had in 1920 and 1921 incorporated the Buffalo, Antioch, Bills Creek, and Cedar Creek schools into that one building, it would be flooded by the lake. So he encouraged the county school board to authorize a new school to be built for the Lake Lure area. While construction was underway, the elementary students had to attend classes in the Logan's Inn, and the high school students attended at R.S. Central High School. The new school was dedicated on September the 19th, 1927, and elementary students all enrolled in that school. The high school students were able to return to the Lake Lure School campus in 1935 when some additions were completed for the Lake Lure School. After 1965, or after 1956, I should say, after 1956, the high school students were again transferred to R.S. Central. And in 1961, due to low enrollment, the Lake Lure School was completely closed. The area students were allowed to choose to attend school either in Rutherford County, Polk County, or Henderson County, and many did choose to attend Polk County schools. And after the state legislature authorized publicly funded charter schools, a decision was made in 2010 to open the Lake Lure Classical Academy in temporary facilities on the site of the former Lake Lure School. The Lake Lure Classical Academy moved into its permanent facilities just off Highway 9 on September the 1st, 2015. This year is the 25th anniversary of the Mountains Branch Library. Except for the small and inadequate student library located in the Lake Lure School, there was no library in the community during the early days of the town's existence. In 1938, the county library system provided a bookmobile to serve the area with a stop at a predetermined location for a short while, one day each week. The residents who could be there at the right time were able to check out books from the limited choices on the truck, or they could request a certain book to be brought the next week. In 1988, Mr. Fred Wise, who was general manager of the Fairfield Mountains Resort, began to work toward securing a library for the area. He hired two ladies to plan and set up a library. Kitty Marchesani took the lead in securing donated books from the county and from municipal libraries. She learned how to set up a local library, and with the help of a retired librarian, Mrs. Dorothy Dunlap, the donated book collection was processed and organized. On October 25th, 1988, open house was held for the new library, located in a double-wide trailer on Buffalo Creek Road. Bookshelves were built by local carpenters, and several volunteers provided services to the library to keep it open for 25 hours each week. The trustees of the Fairfield Mountains Library petitioned the County Library Board in 1989 to take over the Mountains Branch Library as a branch of the county library system. When the property on which the double-wide was located sold in 1990, it became imperative that a new home for the library be found. The town of Lake Lure and Rutherford County jointly rented 3 small buildings, and approximately 1,500 volumes were moved into these temporary headquarters, and the library reopened for business on January 2nd, 1990. Construction began on a modern library building for the Mountains Branch Library in the spring of 1994. In the summer of 1995, the library collection was moved into the new facility, and it opened to the public on October 2nd, 1995. The new 6,185 square foot library with a meeting room was staffed by Mrs. Melanie Greenway as the head librarian, assisted by 35 local volunteers. After Mrs. Greenway retired in 2011, April Young served as branch manager until she was promoted to the position of director of the Rutherford County Library System in 2015. Joy Sharp served as the branch manager from 2015 until 2019. At that time, Maria Davis, who currently serves in the capacity as branch manager, added her capable leadership to this library. The library became a part of the North Carolina Cardinal system in March of this year. This is a consortium of almost 50 counties who share their resources at no cost to library patrons. The Mountains Branch Library has an active support group known as the Friends of the Library. Among other monetary efforts, they sponsor the Books and Bites series each year. This fundraiser brings New York Times best-selling authors to meet readers and fans at the Lake Lure Inn. For a donation of $25 to the Friends group, patrons are served a delicious 3-course meal, have the author speak, and then they participate in an autograph session. The Mountains Branch Library has programs for all ages. Some of the activities include a story time for preschoolers, holiday programs for children and adults, craft classes, cooking demonstrations, lectures, and other special events. The library is located at 150 Bills Creek Road and operates from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays and Saturdays from 10 to 12. The Mountains Branch Library is one of the crown jewels of the Lake Lure community. And I can just say right now, congratulations for 25 years of service to the citizens of this community.